When Lori had asked me to present a little over a month ago, didn't know what I was going to do. It was one of those things where she said, pick something you're interested about, and I'm like, you know what? I think I'm interested about this topic, mainly because it's something that we haven't learned about in school too much, and so it's something where I would have to dive into in my own knowledge base to look at this stuff and to actually learn myself all about this stuff. And so I'm always interested in doing that sort of thing. What I'm asking, or what I'm going to be talking about, is hormone disruptors. And there's a bunch of chemicals in the past that are considered that. There's lots of chemicals here in the present, and there's lots of chemicals in the future that we're going to have with this. The first thing you got to understand, what is a hormone? Basically, a hormone is a chemical substance that controls our body. It tells our body what to do and when to do it. Without that function, our body doesn't know when to secrete insulin. Without that, we're all considered diabetic because we can't regulate our insulin levels. A hormone disruptor is something that disrupts that process by either mimicking the substance that it's trying to take care of, or just simply blocking it or disrupting it so that it doesn't send the signal anyway. In science, we have a problem, and that problem is we have to be able to prove things, and if we can't prove it, it's not true. Well, obviously you know that's not correct. In my chiropractic world, I know a lot of things through observation are true, that I can help people with problems that science says that I can't, but based on observation I know that when I take care of somebody and they get better, it's what I did because they had already tried everything else. And so I know that there is observation, and then I know that there's science, and we got this problem where there's a lag time between the observation to when we can prove that this is actually true. And that causes a potential for a lot of problems when it comes to things that may be causing a lot of damage in our atmosphere and in our lives, but we can't prove it yet. And one of those substances, we're all probably very familiar with that, is DDT. It's a pesticide that we used for a long, long time. It was discovered back in 1874, but not widely used until the 1940s. But it was only a couple years later that we started to actually see effects of that damage being sprayed on fields. We started to see that wildlife was, the eggs were becoming very brittle and they were breaking. And all of a sudden, DNR people are starting to say, hey, this is something new here. We got something going on. And so they said, hey, we got a problem, but we don't know what it is. And give it another 12, 15 years later, and a book comes out saying, hey, we got problems. We got a bunch of these things that we are observing in our environment, wildlife and human, and we don't know what's causing them, but we think it's this DDT thing, and we think that it's this problem, but we don't know it yet, so we're just going to publish this book, and that's how it comes out. It took 10 more years for the U.S. government to ban the substance. In 2004, there was a worldwide ban that basically banned it in all countries except for a couple countries that use it for malaria control. We know and can prove basically everything with this substance that's bad. We know that it's a DNA disruptor. What that means is it causes birth defects. It causes damage to our cells at the cellular level so they can't reproduce. We know that it's a hormone disruptor, which is what I'm talking about today, and we know that it causes cancers of the breast, liver, and pancreas, and a whole bunch of other problems. But it took 25 years of people getting sick and getting cancers and getting problems before anything was ever actually done. The next one that we have on my list, basically what I decided to do, since I had a limited amount of time and There's lots of chemicals out there that I could talk about, but I had to choose just a handful of chemicals to talk about today. So I chose 2 chemicals that are banned, 2 chemicals that we are presently using that are kind of being considered dangerous, and 2 chemicals that I consider dangerous now, but there's no proof to that. The next chemical that I'm going to talk about is PCBs. Basically, they're used in electronic equipment. Basically, if you look out at the power lines and the transformers out there, they probably all contain PCBs in them still. 1929, Monsanto took over that because it just was getting out of control with the amount of production that needed to happen. And so by 1936, there was some industrial accidents where it caused a lot of problems for those workers that were working in the factories. And that was kind of the first written reports going to the government saying, hey, this is a problem. We have a real problem on our hands with this chemical. People knew that there were harmful effects well before that, but it was just kind of like, well, we're not using the chemical, so there's no harmful effects. Give it another, looks like about 25 years or so, and in the 1960s and 70s, the companies that were using this chemical started saying, crap, this chemical is very harmful, and we have no way to get rid of it. So they start dumping it in rivers, they start dumping it in streams, they start dumping it in the ditches. There's one report where basically they're taking a pumper truck down a gravel road and they're just pumping it into the ditch because they just want to get rid of it before the government bans it and says you got to pay to get rid of this stuff. So they're just basically getting rid of it. And even today, you can drive down some of the East Coast and find deadly concentrations of this stuff. 1979, the U.S. decided to ban this because it causes cancer. They just flat out said it caused cancer. And in 2001, it's a worldwide ban happened. If you look at Apple products still contain this, does not contain PCBs. Well, obviously it shouldn't contain them because it's been banned for 12 years. But it's kind of like, hey, we still need to say we banned this product, and it causes a lot of problems. But again, we're only just starting to see the effects of this because we're throwing away products that contain PCBs. We're throwing them away in the garbage, and they're going in the landfill. And a landfill, eventually, the membrane's going to break, and that's going to eventually go in our streams and waterways, and it's going to become a problem. That's why it's been banned. So today, we know and can prove that these cause cancer, and they also alter estrogen levels, which is a cancer-causing, if estrogen levels are increased, it oftentimes leads to cancer. So we got 2 more chemicals here that are being under scrutiny today. The U.S. is not doing as much as other countries are doing with one of these chemicals. It's called BPA. I'm sure we're all very familiar with that because anybody that has a water bottle probably has heard of BPA. It's been in use since the 1980s. Today it can be found in all canned goods pretty much. It can be found in the little receipt papers and pretty much all number 7 plastics. 1997, so we're talking 15 years roughly, the first reports of low dose effects of this chemical, because we're not getting exposed to it in high levels. We're just getting exposed in very small levels all the time in pretty much everything. Their first reports came out in 97. In 2008 is when we first kind of saw the government step in and say, hey, we think this is a problem. And so this led to a lot of manufacturers calling their products BPA free, kind of using it as a marketing tool where they're saying, buy this water bottle, it's BPA free now. And using that as a marketing tool and not necessarily as a health concern. In 2010, Canada declares this BPA as a toxic substance. when Canada labels a food a toxic, or a chemical a toxic substance, it cannot come in contact with food. Which, number one, if you buy anything in a tin can, it's lined with BPA. Just lined with it. That's just a protection for the tin can. So we have it in contact with pretty much, if you open up a can, you're going to have BPA in that can. So that's a big problem when Canada says we've banned it from food contact and we haven't. So what I'm going to start seeing is that Canada's probably going to start seeing some differences in their health versus our health, and maybe this is going to be a reason why, because they've pretty much banned it from use in food, and we still use it all the time in food. 2012, the USDA puts a sippy cup baby bottle ban in place, basically saying the low dose effects affect kids more, so we're going to say we're going to ban it in this baby bottles. Well, to me, if we're going to ban it in baby bottles, we should be banning it in everything, because it's harmful. Mom drinks from bottles. Those bottles get into the breast milk, it gets into the baby. So you got to ban it in everything. You just have to. We know that this substance is getting bad. We know and can prove pretty much everything with this. The problem is the science doesn't prove it yet. And we were talking about brain development. Brain development meaning things like ADD and ADHD. Thyroid problems. Well, if anybody wants to, anybody on Synthroid in here?
Come on. I'm only one.
A lot of people on Synthroid in here, or a lot of people on Synthroid. I would say 10% of my patients are on Synthroid. Basically, we're screwing up our thyroids with some of these chemicals. And we got to ask ourselves, what are we doing that's causing this problem? Because back when I was younger, we didn't have problems like we do today. Sexual dysfunction. I first heard about the sexual dysfunction back when I was going to NIAC in, what was that, 2005. I went to a seminar, and this guy, the seminar guy, said, watch out for this. It's altering sexual problems, and mainly in men, and it's causing a lot of problems. And this is years before the government ever says anything. It also causes increased cancer risk. A lot of environmental and water quality issues with this as well. I bet within the next 10 years we're going to see a lot of regulation put on this chemical, and we're still using it every day. If you open up a can, it's there. So buy stuff in glass jars. That's about the best way you can get away with this chemical. The next one is one that scares the crap out of me, mainly because it's in everything. It's in everything that we have in our bathroom. I went in today just because I thought, hey, we kind of use healthy products in the bathroom. Phthalates are a group of chemicals. Basically, a lot of them are scents. They have a certain scent to them. And so pretty much when you look at in your bathroom, lotions, hairsprays, shampoos, shaving creams, air fresheners, they all contain a phthalate. And how you know that is whether it says fragrance or parfum. Parfum and fragrance are the manufacturer's way of saying there's a chemical compound in there that smells, but it's man-made. It's a chemical compound, which, by the way, looked at my little son's baby shampoo. It says lavender on it. It says lavender. There's no lavender in it. It says fragrance on it, which means that it contains a lavender-like chemical in it. There's no lavender in it, so why call it scented with lavender? It's that we smell lavender, not necessarily that lavender is actually in it. In the last 10 years, a lot of studies have been done in a lot of other countries that have brought this kind to the forefront. A lot of them saying that there's a lot of problems, mostly dealing with asthma. I know a lot of kids have asthma these days. I know a lot of kids have allergies these days. Way more than when I was a young kid. I don't think there was such a thing as a peanut allergy back when I was a kid, 20 years ago. This first kind of came, this phthalates and BPA and a few of these other chemicals came in right as I was getting out of this young age of people that are under 20 are the group that I'm looking at right now that are having all these kind of problems. And it's mainly because the chemicals were being introduced when they were developing. And that's why I'm bringing it to this group, is because we're exposing our young kids to chemicals that we have no idea that they could be causing their allergies or their asthma or who knows what else. This phthalates also has a link to obesity and diabetes by altering the hormone disruption in the pancreas and altering insulin levels. So best way to look for this substance is buy stuff that's fragrance-free. If you can buy stuff that says fragrance-free on it, you'll help limit this. But like I said, even in our bathroom, and I challenge all you guys to go home and read the labels, see how many of them have fragrance or perfume listed in them. A lot of problems with that chemical. Again, we know but can't necessarily prove a lot of these. A lot of them are based on a correlation study where you look at two population groups and say, this one doesn't use it and this one does. This one has more health problems and this one doesn't. So maybe there's a link, but we don't know it for sure. And that's kind of a problem when we start seeing one group of people having a lot more problems than another group. So our government decides to do something about this because we got people, saying, hey, we got problems with this hormone disruptor thing that people are talking about. So in 1998, they created a program called the Endocrine Disruptor Screening Program, but it wasn't actually started until 2009. So it took the government 11 years to just even do anything with this thing. Basically, their approach to this is that they're going to add chemicals to a list, study them for a period of years, see if they have any effects in lab rats or, just in the laboratory pretty much, if they have any kind of problems. And if they don't, they say this chemical doesn't have a problem. If they say, well, these rats kind of have more problems, then they're going to put it into a second phase and say, what are these problems? We don't know what they are. We're going to study what those problems are. So in 2009, 73 chemicals were added to this list to study. And in 2012, 134 more of them were added. There haven't been any results from this yet, but I do expect in the next year that they're saying by 2013 they're supposed to have information about these chemicals. Who knows what that means, but maybe something comes out of this. The European Union has their own basically screening program as well that they're putting into place. My next slide is kind of one of those slides that puts it into perspective. There's over 1,300 chemicals out there that we can consider hormone disrupting. We're playing Russian roulette with this. We don't know which ones are and which ones aren't. We just suspect that they all are until they're proven not to be. And that's the way the government should act on this as well, I think. They should say, we're going to not put this in harm's way of people until we've proven it safe. But they decide we're just going to introduce all these chemicals and we'll figure it out later. So that's like Russian roulette to me. Put a chemical in the chamber and hope it doesn't shoot you. There's a few chemicals that I want to talk about that I think are real problems. They haven't really been proven by science yet to cause any problems, but based on my education level, I think that they're going to become a problem. Number one is RBST, which is the artificial growth hormone that it's mainly injected into milking cows. It was first introduced in '93, and ever since then it's been under a lot of scrutiny from not the government, but from people saying, this isn't right. We're injecting artificial stuff into our cows, they produce more milk, but I don't know if I want to, basically drink this artificial stuff. So current science says that there's no problem, but most of the science that's been done is done by the manufacturer. And that is a big conflict of interest. The manufacturer says, hey, it's safe, government. We don't need your regulation on this. It's safe. I beg to differ with a lot of this stuff because in 2000, Canada, Australia, Japan, and the European Union, which is 15 countries by the way, restricted the sale or use in cattle. Mainly because it causes a whole lot of problem in cattle. It causes the cattle to get sick, mainly. It causes them to have more infections, have more problems milking. So if we have bad cows milking, then you're putting antibiotics into the cows to make them healthy, so to speak. Antibiotics get into the milk. The artificial growth hormone gets into the milk. So we have quite a few first world countries saying, we're not going to use this thing, or we're not going to use it in our cattle, which also means we're probably not going to have it in our milk. So I think in the next 10 years, you're going to start to see Canada, Australia, Japan, and the European Union say, the US, they have all these problems, and we don't. I wonder if this is a reason why, because we're not using this chemical as much. They don't restrict the use of it in the milk, but they restrict the use of it in the cattle. So they can import milk from the US. It's not actually that there's a ban on the product itself. So because of all this, stores have started to say, hey, we're going to not buy milk that is from these artificial hormone injected cows. One of those is Walmart's Great Value brand. I don't know if anybody drinks that, but it's one of those things where they don't publish that information usually because they're just kind of like doing it as a marketing kind of thing almost, that we don't know whether this is a problem. The milk that I buy, which is out of Hanson's Farm Fresh Dairy out of Hudson, Iowa, says on there, produced by non-injected cows, pretty much. And then it also has a little asterisk that says the FDA has not found any difference between the two milks. Well, the problem is Monsanto sued companies for saying we don't use this artificial hormone, and basically said our milk's better than this artificial hormone milk. And Monsanto stepped in, sued these people, and said this milk is no different. The government said it, that this milk is no different. If you want to put this label on your milk, you have to say that the FDA has no problem with this milk. Again, I really have a problem with this because the science that is done on it, I think is bogus. It's not real. They're basically buffering the results to say that it's okay. And I think we're going to start finding a lot of problems when the U.S. has more allergies and more asthma and more of this, and other countries aren't adding as many chemicals into their atmosphere, and we are, and so we're going to say we got more problems. The next one, kind of just a general category. The Latin for killers, sides. So when we talk about pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, their job is to kill. Got to remember that. So if you're willing to drink an insecticide, most people aren't, by the way, then why would you be spraying it on your food? Well, They say it washes off within 7 days. Well, even if there's just a small amount, you're poisoning yourself every time you eat that food. Even if you wash it off, it gets into the food, it gets into the skin. You just never know with this stuff. But if you're not willing to drink the stuff, then you shouldn't be putting it on your food. Best way to do it is don't use it to begin with. Grow your own garden so you don't have to buy organic produce. Don't use it. And chat with people. Chat with the people that you buy your food from, especially if you go to the farmer's market and ask them, do you spray your food? You know, do you spray it? A lot of them will say, no, I only spray it if it needs it. Way better than going out on a commercial field where they just spray the whole thing because they just want to prevent a problem from ever happening to begin with, not waiting for the problem to arise and then spray that spot problem. The next one, GMOs, genetically modified organisms. Not a chemical per se, but we're doing potentially some big problems with this. Basically think of it like playing God in the garden. We're taking a chemical, or taking a tomato, changing it so that we can pick it green, ship it across the country, ripen it with a gas, and put it in the store shelf, and it can handle all that because it shipped 2,000 miles. Basically, you're trying to create a GMOs are trying to create something that is not found in nature. Roundup Ready corn, Roundup Ready soybeans. Anybody that thinks it's okay to just go ahead and spray Roundup over your entire field, just because it's Roundup Ready soybeans that you're planting, or Roundup Ready corn, there should be a real problem with that. Because in essence, it's no different than spraying DDT all over your field 50, 75 years ago, and we're going to eventually find out that we have a problem. Because that's how the problem started in the first place. Widespread use. We're spraying Roundup over all fields pretty much now, because we have Roundup Ready corn, soybeans, sugar beets, canola, cotton. Those are all genetically altered so that they can be Roundup Ready. The industry says that we can feed the world with this. But I ask, at what cost are we going to feed the world? Because if we're going to alter our food, we can also alter other things. And that gets to the next slide. When you put something as Roundup Ready, Roundup works by getting down into the root and altering the uptake of nutrients. So if you create a Roundup Ready plant, you also alter the uptake of nutrients in that plant. So Roundup Ready corn doesn't have the same amount of nutrients as regular corn does. I'm not talking about proteins, fats, and carbs. I'm talking about the micronutrients, things like magnesium, manganese. Manganese and magnesium are two of the most common ones that Roundup Ready alters the uptake of that. And with that, you're not getting it in the corn. You're feeding the animals corn then. That corn doesn't have that nutrient in it. The cows no longer have that nutrient in it. We don't have that nutrient in it because we don't eat that corn, or we don't eat that meat that doesn't have that chemical. Very, very common. Kind of the first GMO was started back 1996. So we're only talking about 15 years or so of GMOs in our atmosphere, in our world right now. So in the last 15 years, can you say allergies have gone up? I would say yes. One of the best known things that GMOs are known for is to cause allergic reactions, because the food is no longer pure. It's mixed with things. And so when it's mixed with things, it can cause allergic reaction, because the body doesn't recognize it as just a tomato. It recognizes it as 2/3 tomato and 1/3 something else that it doesn't know why it's mixed together with the same thing. So this comes to the next one. The European Union requires labeling of GMOs. Our country says we're not going to label GMOs. This is a problem because when you label something, you also create traceability, so you know you can backtrack. It also creates accountability, so that if something does happen, you can basically put the person responsible accountable for their action. So by not labeling it, you also don't create any traceability, you don't create any accountability. A bill just passed in April gives GMO companies basically a free pass to do business, even if their product is considered dangerous. And that should scare people, because just the government may say, hey, we got a problem, but the companies can still produce the Roundup Ready corn and the Roundup Ready seeds to be planted. And the government has no control to step in and say, hey, this is causing problems. We're going to stop it. So again, something that we need to watch out for. So, well, study says 70% of the food that's in a grocery store is genetically altered. So go to the grocery store, 7 out of 10 items that you pick up are probably going to have a genetically modified component in it. Most of it being high fructose corn syrup. That's our main ingredient with a lot of chemicals, a lot of things. That's something that, again, we cannot trace that. We just know that's in most of our products. And so, can you say in a correlation study that increased use of genetically modified organisms causes increased rate of allergies? Well, I don't know, because who knows? There's no traceability, because there's nothing labeling it. There's nothing saying this is genetically modified that I'm eating and you aren't. And so we gotta label this stuff. The only way you can label it is to contact your government, because they're gonna be the ones that, with this, basically since '99, we've been trying to label this. Activists have been trying to get this labeled, and every year it gets knocked down. Although I just heard this last week that Vermont got it passed in the House by, I think, 99 to 42 to label GMOs in the state of Vermont. Now it just has to get through the Senate, and it would be passed. So my recommendations to you: don't heat plastic. It doesn't matter what kind of plastic it is, just don't heat it. Even in the dishwasher, even though it says top rack safe, don't heat it. It causes the release of the toxins that are in the plastic. And using harsh cleaners also break down the little film that's on the top of the plastic that protects it from bleaching chemicals. Recycle everything. Can't stress that enough. Just because your cell phone's broke, don't throw it in the trash. It contains all kinds of things that we don't know yet whether they're causing problems. And so if you throw it in the landfill, you throw it out, you just stomp on it, you throw it in the ditch, you burn it, you do whatever, because you just want to get rid of it, that could potentially be causing problems. Use glass. Glass doesn't contain anything that's known to be harmful. Choose locally organic foods if you can. Don't spray your foods with pesticides, herbicides, insecticides. And surely don't spray your lawns with this, especially if you got kids, because your kids play in the grass. They're going to be right there down at the level where you sprayed that stuff at. No known poison should ever be considered safe. So if it's not safe to put in your mouth, you shouldn't be putting it on whatever you're planning to eat. Stay away from products with long ingredient lists, and especially ones you can't pronounce. If it says 1,2-diethylmexyl, blah, 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 stay away from it. It's a chemical. It's a chemical that is just man-made to do whatever. And get involved with the growing practices and growing process, and question things that you like, I don't know if you should be spraying my food with crap that you don't want to eat. The next big, bold one, I get this all the time. Dr. Pogemiller, organic costs too much. I got to ask you, what's the price of cancer? What price are you willing to put on your body, your health? Is it going to be $1,000? Is it going to be $10,000? Is it going to be $100,000? Because organic food costs more. Yes, it does. So grow your own. That's what we're doing. Grow our own. Know that you're not putting that stuff on your food. But think about that when you have to pay for cancer later. Think about that you could have prevented that by just spending an extra $20 a week at the grocery store buying organic food. So, probably just created a lot more questions than any kind of answers I could have given you in just a short speech. And that's good. I want you to question everything that you eat, whether you put it in your mouth, because it is your health. Remember that. It's not my health. I'm doing what I want to do. My goal is to educate you on what you guys should be doing as well, because it's about questioning practices, not just accepting that, well, they say it's safe. The government says, well, they haven't pulled it off the shelf yet, which brings up the next one. Every prescription drug on the market today has been labeled safe and effective by the FDA. Until it has been proven not to be, then it will get extra warnings or be pulled. That shouldn't be the case. It should be the other way around. It should be that it doesn't get approval until it's proven to be safe. Not that we're going to put it into the mass public, and if 100 people die, we're going to put a warning on it. And if 1,000 people die, we're going to pull it off the shelf. It shouldn't have to be like that. We should know what these effects are before we go introducing them into the general public. So I have something to ask of you as a general population of especially people that work with the general public and work with young kids especially. I want to create a distribution point at the clinic to basically have farmers, have people bring food to me so I can distribute it out further. And try to get good, healthy food into my office so that I can distribute it out further. I drive down every 2 weeks to get myself adjusted in Waterloo. While I'm down there, I get some ice cream, and I get some milk, get some butter, trying to get things locally. Well, I could easily have them create a distribution point up here for that stuff. I'm just trying to get something more local, that we don't need to buy milk from who knows where. It may be produced in Mexico by the time it gets up here. Who knows where our food's really coming from. And basically we can produce most everything we need within a couple 100 miles here. And so all I'm asking is that I need to know whether or not this is feasible, and I would like input back from people just in general. It doesn't have to be you guys, it can be anybody. I just want input to see whether or not people would want that. Think of it like a farmer's market, but the farmers aren't there. I don't want the farmers to take time out of their day, and I also don't want to take their profit. I just want to be there as the distribution point, take a little bit of a profit to cover my operating costs of having a refrigerator, or having this or having that, and have people come to me to get whatever they need. Not creating a grocery store by any means, but I'm just trying to create a place where people can bring their homemade granola bars or their homemade this or homemade that, and that those ingredients are also healthy ingredients. So I can try to create a healthy environment, basically. And also, I would like to create programs, if there aren't any in place, to get kids involved at places like TLC and several of the other places in town where they can help plant gardens and get involved with the growing process. Go out there and pick the food and eat the food. There's no reason why, TLC couldn't have a nice little cherry tomato plant and have cherry tomatoes as a little snack. Shouldn't be any problem with that. And we should expand that even further and have fresh food coming for the kids. And if you know where it's coming from, you came right from your backyard, came right from wherever you are, you knew it didn't spray chemicals on it, you can at least guarantee that those young kids are getting good food then. So it doesn't have to cost you a lot either. You don't have to buy organic food. You just have to grow it. And growing the food isn't necessarily very hard. You don't have to make it hard. I watch my son, who's 2 years old, help me every day make food. He helps me. If I get the blender out to make a smoothie and I say, Justin, we're time to make a smoothie, he's just running up to his little chair to stand there, and I get the oranges out and we're peeling them together and we put everything in the blender, and he's got the plunger and he's just plunging it in, and he's all part of this process of eating food, preparing food, preparing good healthy food, not food out of a box. And what's really amazing was when I switched to doing that versus just giving him the sippy cup, he drank this whole sippy cup the first time I gave it to him. I said, here, you helped me make it, here. And he just drank it. And I'm like, whoa, I'm onto something here. Because before I was just making it myself and I would give it to him and he would never drink it. Now he became part of the process of making it, and that I think really changed things. He helps us do the coffee in the morning, helps us do the tea, helps us make all the food for breakfast, lunch, supper. He just helps us do everything. Got a little stand where we can just move it around, helps us do the dishes, helps us in the kitchen preparing food. It's not just about pulling out something out of the freezer, putting it in the microwave, 5 minutes later you got your food. You don't know where your food came from. And that's where I'm trying to get kids to understand if they can watch the plant grow. I think everybody probably has, at some point in their life, watched a little chick hatch, maybe in kindergarten or preschool. And it just kind of put perspective on it, because you watch this egg hatch into a little chicken. I want to have people have those little kids watch their food grow, pick it, eat it, and say, hey, this is really good food. So I need your feedback. I need to be able to have you guys say, I want that. And I can help you create those programs and help create basically a healthier childhood for these kids, that hopefully then they go back to their parents and say, hey, we have a tomato plant at our daycare. Can we plant a tomato plant in our garden? Or can we plant a tomato plant out on our deck? Sure, why not? We can just kind of start it just slowly. And I really want to see that happen. I've watched a bunch of YouTube videos on how schools are integrating this into their lunch programs. And it's really interesting to watch the ag students that are 9th through 12th grade ag students take care of a 2-acre farm, and all the food that comes off that farm goes right back into the school system. Just really cool to see that. It teaches kids how to take care of the environment too. It teaches kids where their food comes from. So I just want you guys to email me, call me, give me your ideas, say this is a great idea, how do we get started, and we can sit down and chat. The last slide on the back page has 4 different websites. They're basically websites that give you good information as current as possible. The first one is the EPA's website that is on the Endocrine Disrupting Screening Program. The next one is a book that's really good kind of gives you a lot of information that of chemicals that maybe isn't necessarily science-based, but it's trying to get as much evidence-based out there as possible. The next one is the European Union's screening program. And the last one is like a newsletter, basically, that comes out quarterly, and it talks about all the stuff that's happening across the world in chemical news, whether things are being banned, what's happening with this substance, what the Netherlands are doing here, and what this country is doing here. And it's a good way to kind of keep up to date, and it's very short, and it just kind of breaks down what other countries are doing, because the U.S., I don't think, is doing nearly enough that we should be with some of these chemicals. Any questions from anybody?
I don't have any questions, but a friend of mine was having trouble with his stomach, and this several years ago he told me this, and he went through Mayo Clinic, and they told him it was the food he was eating because it wasn't local, and that kind of solved his problem.
Yeah. Not necessarily organic food, but just...
Right, not necessarily organic, but it was, I don't know where he was getting his food.
Just...
It was from the locale.
Yeah, his body's not recognizing the food,
Right.
basically. Yeah, and I'm seeing that people with the gut kind of issues, seeing that quite a bit, because people can't recognize the food anymore, so their body doesn't know how to digest it anymore. And so it's causing a lot of digestive problems, and then that leads to nutrition problems if we're not digesting food properly. And if we lead to nutrition problems, then we lead to health problems.
And also on the BPA, I just read an article, BPA's first cousin, BPB.
Yep.
And they recommend not to microwave any plastic.
Yep.
No food and no microwave plastic. No food in plastic, no microwave.
No. Shouldn't.
Breaking it down.
I hadn't even thought about the heat of the dishwasher as well.
No, I never.
I haven't measured the heat inside the dishwasher, but I know it's very hot when it gets onto the dry cycle.
I think they recommend 140 degrees on the water heater to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking, yeah, it's way hotter than 140 once it gets to the dry cycle.
Okay.
It's, I'm sure it's well over boiling because it's steaming when it comes out.
For a couple of years, or three, how many, Carrie, did they do that? TLC did plant a garden, but they had to put it in tubs because you have a lot of kids on that playground and you had to protect the little green tomatoes or whatever. But it was a big hit. It was a project with the foster grandparents. And they would go out and pick it every day and bring it back. And they were eating the green beans as they were walking back in the door, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's, I know kids would love it. And to me, I think that needs to be part of the education system as well, that we need to start the kids young on how to prepare food. I just saw an article today, Carrie Lane people, that the nutritionist Jill Beaver went there and was teaching the kids, these young parents, how to prepare food.
I was very surprised about the comments that the students made.
Yeah.
Like it was a new revelation to them. I don't know if you read that article. It was really.
I'm talking to a different generation right now, but if I were to go talk with 15-year-olds, what they're eating today is nothing compared to what you guys eat on a daily basis. People live on their mochas, people live on all kinds of it's calories, but it's not nutrition. And so that doesn't necessarily get to what I'm talking about here, but just in general, dealing with the health of the population as a whole, we got too much bad crap out there that we're eating. And if we get away with that, get away with all the bad crap, then and start preparing our food, preparing our food takes time. It's again, at what cost are you willing to put your plastic in the microwave to heat it up? What are you willing to do if it's known probably to cause problems? I'm trying to figure out a way not to microwave my food. I haven't quite figured out how to do that with some of my frozen food yet. Because I really don't like starting up the oven for things when it's 90 degrees out. But I also know that I've seen enough studies to show that the microwave is a problem. It destroys a lot of things in our food as well.
Just a side note here, we have a county care facility in Mitchell County. I think there's one of the, maybe 3 in the whole state anymore. A few years ago, one of the local farmers who participates and helps out there took some rings off of a hog feeder, you know how they're made of steel?
Yep.
You cut the bottom off of it, so you have about a section this large, this tall, and they set it on an old foundation out there at the county care facility, filled it with dirt, and now the county care facility residents grow a lot of their own food.
Yeah.
They start it from seed inside in one of the lounges where they have exposure to sunlight,
Yeah.
and then they go out and plant it. And it's a raised bed, so they don't have to. Most of these people are physically and also mentally challenged, so they don't have to get out on their hands and knees to garden, and you won't either if you want to garden, you can. There's seed companies that have specific plants designed for container.
Yep.
On the right track.
Like I said, I'm just talking to a different population here. It's definitely different seeing what the young kids eat when I talk with them in my practice about what they're eating on a daily basis. And I guarantee you guys probably still make most of your food kind of from scratch. It may come from a can a little bit, but I bet most of you guys still prepare your food. Not just going to Hy-Vee and going to the frozen food section and saying, dinner, microwave, eat. It's a little different. So there's things we need to learn.
You listen all night to this conversation coming. I know I can.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.